I am the wealthy heroine in a broken mirror reunion romance novel. After breaking up with the male lead, my family was destroyed in no time. I fell from the altar straight into the mud, suffered endlessly, and when I was selling drinks in a nightclub, I ran into the male lead again. He had already become successful and untouchable, bringing along his contractual fiancée. He made things difficult for me, humiliated me, trampled my dignity, then told me he loved me. He said, "If you don't personally experience it once, you will never understand the inferiority and humiliation I once felt." I apologized to him in guilt, and he then allowed me, like charity, to be with him again, which was considered the good ending everyone approved of. After awakening, I dumped him at light speed. He waited downstairs at my dorm, eyes red as he asked me why. I told him, "You're unlucky. You drain my family's fortune." Chapter 1. When a long flood of memories from the original book poured into my mind, Mason and I were standing at the entrance of a 3-star Michelin restaurant. The waiter looked at his old jacket stained with oil and dust, visibly troubled. "Sir, we cannot allow anyone who is not dressed properly to dine in our restaurant." Mason looked at me coldly. "How long are you planning to keep playing the spoiled princess game before you finally get tired of it? Does watching me make a fool of myself make your noble identity feel even higher?" I rubbed my aching temples. "You think I did this on purpose? What else? You knew perfectly well I had a part-time job today, and yet you scheduled our date at a place like this. Isn't that exactly what you wanted? Avery, you honestly make me feel sick." As he spoke, the malice in his eyes was undisguised, almost spilling over. If this had been the old me, I would have rushed to apologize, said it was my fault, that I hadn't considered his male pride. Then I would have harshly scolded the waiter, driven Mason away from the restaurant, and taken him to eat at some roadside stall he could afford. I would have thrown away my heiress pride, coaxing him in every way possible, just to see him smile at me. Unfortunately, those days are gone. I held my small purse and said calmly, "Your part-time shift ended at 4. I told you to meet me at 6. Your workplace is less than 2 kilometers from campus. Even crawling, you could have gone back to change. You came dressed like this. Who exactly are you trying to embarrass? Or is it that being my boyfriend makes you unhappy, so you want to make sure I'm even more unhappy?" Mason stared at me in shock. His expression showed the awkwardness of having his little scheme exposed. I didn't wait for him to answer and continued, Avery, hate forcing anyone to do anything, and I never lack people willing to have dinner with me. Since you clearly don't feel like going on this date, go back to school now." With that, I stepped into the restaurant in my heels and leisurely called my best friend, Nova. She arrived quickly and greeted me with a teasing grin. "So you finally remembered I exist? Everyone says you're obsessed with some ungrateful guy lately, spending money on him, flattering him, and he still won't show you a decent expression." Pressing my fingers against my brow, I was still digesting the memories that had surged into my head. Hearing her words, I sighed lightly. "It's worse than that. According to the novel's original plot, next, I would beg my father to help him unconditionally, opening every door possible for his entrepreneurial dreams. When Mason's studio finally gained a little traction, my own company would fall into crisis and collapse. To avoid dragging him down, I would break up with him and lie about having a new lover. He would carry hatred for me while rising to power, and I would sink deeper into misery. My parents would die one after another. Our butler, trying to protect me, would be beaten to death by debt collectors. In the end, I would end up selling drinks in a nightclub. When a drunk customer harassed me, the now successful Mason would descend like a hero. He would save me from the customer, then grab my chin and ask, "Avery, do you regret humiliating me back then?" Thinking of this, a chill ran through me. I gulped down a large mouthful of wine. Nova continued, "When I came in just now, I saw a guy dressed all dirty standing by the entrance. Was that your little boyfriend?" I nodded. "He's good looking. I'll give him that. But you didn't need to spend 800,000 on him, did you?" Nova exaggerated her expression. "And after taking all your money, he still treats you badly? Isn't that the definition of taking advantage while playing the victim?" I tugged at the corner of my lips. "Let's not talk about things that ruin my appetite. Let's eat first." Chapter 2. When Nova and I walked out after finishing our meal, I realized Mason was still standing at the restaurant entrance. Moonlight poured down like woven silver, illuminating his clean-cut, handsome face. He looked at me, his voice slightly hoarse, his expression subdued. Avery. This was his signal of backing down. If it had been in the past, I definitely wouldn't have been able to resist. I'd have thrown myself at him and hugged him tightly. Between Mason and me, it had always been that as long as he was willing to reach out even a little, I would give in without boundaries. But that was before. I looked at him, my expression calm. What is it? I didn't mean to. There were a lot of customers at the shop today, and the boss asked me to work an extra hour, so I didn't have time to go back and change. His tone softened. I'm sorry. It won't happen again. I nodded. All right, I forgive you. You should head back to school. Mason froze for a moment. Where are you going? Home. Among those overwhelming returning memories, the most important thing wasn't my relationship with Mason, but the company's crisis. When I arrived home, Mickey was in the yard tending to my little garden. He was 5 years older than me. We grew up together, and though he had already finished his master's degree, he still stayed at my house as a caretaker. In those memories of the future, after my family went bankrupt, he protected me, and the debt collectors beat him to death with steel pipes. Thinking of this, a dull ache spread through my chest. I softly called out to him, Mickey, young miss, you're back. He put down the watering can, looking slightly surprised. A few glass lanterns glowed warmly in the yard, the yellow light overlapping across his face, softening the cold lines of his features. He came over to open the door, letting me inside to change my shoes. Where are my parents? Sir and Madam have a social engagement tonight. The project with Crown wasn't secured. I froze. Why? Wasn't our company the one Crown originally favored? Mickey hesitated for a long moment before finally speaking. Last time, when they asked that retired tumor expert to come out of retirement, Sir owed him a favor. Because of that, the other party took advantage of the contract amount. I understood instantly. The so-called tumor expert had been invited to perform surgery for Mason's mother, who had cancer. My father had always adored me, and after I pestered him with spoiled pleading, he agreed to something so difficult. He even gave Mason 800,000 yuan so he could pay for the surgery and the following hospitalization. Guilt consumed my heart, drowning me, and self-loathing surged to its peak. I bit my lip, only managing to speak after a long moment. I was really too immature, wasn't I? Mickey shook his head almost immediately, looking at me with gentle indulgence. Young miss is still young. A little childishness is normal. In his eyes, I was always that little girl 5 years younger, chasing after him asking for snacks. But I knew very well that I was already 21, and the responsibilities I should bear. I can't run from them. Chapter 3. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat in the living room waiting for my parents to come home. Mickey stood across from me, keeping me company. No matter how I urged him, he refused to sit down. His expression was serious. Proper etiquette cannot be neglected. I frowned. You're so old-fashioned. His expression didn't change. He lowered his head respectfully. Please forgive me, young miss. I grew bored from waiting and eventually began to carefully study his features. Only then did I realize that Mickey had a face no less attractive than Mason's. In fact, his deep-set features and sharp brows were even more striking, but he always stood silently and restrained behind me. So after growing up, I almost never looked directly at him anymore. Mickey. Curiosity suddenly rose in me. Hugging a cushion, I called to him. Those years when you were studying outside, did you ever have a girlfriend? He froze on the spot. After a long while, he answered quietly, No, you're so handsome, and no girl ever liked you? I couldn't believe it. Then what kind of girl do you like? Nova said you're really handsome and she wanted to see if things could develop with you. Mickey's lashes lowered. I couldn't clearly see the expression in his eyes, only that his voice sounded somewhat heavy and a little dejected. Young miss, please don't joke about me like that. Later on, I curled up on the sofa and fell asleep. When I woke up, I was in my own bedroom. When I went downstairs, only Mickey and the housekeeper were in the living room. I asked him, Where are my parents? Sir and Madam came back late at night to pack. They said they needed to make a trip to North City. Madam saw you were asleep and didn't want to wake you. She said they'll explain things when they return. He poured a glass of milk and looked at me. Miss, please have breakfast before returning to school. I nodded and picked up the sandwich from the plate. Suddenly remembering something, I swallowed a sip of milk and looked up at him. After I fell asleep last night, who carried me back to my room? Almost instantly, Mickey's ears and even his neck flushed red. He took a big step back, looking at me in complete panic. I'm sorry, young miss. I was just asking casually. Don't be so nervous. I hadn't expected such a big reaction. His eyes looking at me rippled like the clear surface of a lake in spring. It stunned me for a second. Mickey must have realized his loss of composure. He collected himself slightly, then spoke gently. Please eat your breakfast. Young miss, I'll take you to school later. The Bentley wrapped in laser pink stopped at the school gate. With my small purse on my shoulder, I stepped out gracefully. Just as I walked near the teaching building, I ran straight into Mason. Under the sycamore tree a few steps ahead, he was slightly lowering his head, speaking softly to a long-haired girl in a white dress. The campus belle. Jenny, Mason's future contract fiancée. In the original plot, she had secretly loved Mason since she was young and couldn't stand the sight of me. Later, when she became his fiancée yet saw his lingering feelings for me, she hated me even more. I walked straight over, just in time to hear her persuading Mason. It's not your fault. She has that spoiled princess temper and doesn't show others the slightest respect. Who can tolerate that? Mason's lips pressed together. I'll handle it. Don't worry. Jenny looked at him sadly, her eyes brimming with tears. She humiliates you in every way. My heart aches for you. Mason, if your heart aches, then pay back the $800,000 for him. I let out a short laugh and spoke. Giving you money, helping you find a surgeon, if that counts as humiliating him, then let's switch. Miss Jenny, why don't you humiliate me instead? Jenny snapped angrily. Avery, sure, you're rich, but aren't you relying on your family for all of that? What abilities do you have on your own? If one day your family goes bankrupt, could you still act so high and mighty in front of us? A buzzing sound exploded in my mind. The Jenny in front of me overlapped suddenly with the one in the original plot. At that time, Mason and I had reunited 5 years later. He was soaring in success, and I had nothing. She leaned close to my ear, using the softest, most harmless voice to say the cruelest words. See? After leaving you, Mason quickly achieved success, and the people who stayed by your side, none of them ended well. Avery, you're the unlucky, poisonous one who ruins everyone around you. How are you ever going to atone for the sins you've committed? Provoked over and over, and already mentally fragile, I attempted suicide. Mason arrived in time and saved me, and the first thing I did when I woke up was clutch his shirt and apologize for my past arrogant, spoiled princess behavior. Chapter 4. But why should I apologize? If he felt humiliated, he could have simply refused my money and rejected my help. Instead, he accepted everything, took the money, used the resources, yet in the end acted like a victim, making everyone who saw me say, "You owe him an apology." It was absolutely disgusting. With a cold expression, I raised my hand to slap Mason, but he grabbed my wrist tightly, gritting his teeth. He said each word forcefully. Have you made enough trouble, Avery? Jenny and I are just friends. If you're still angry, come at me. Don't make things difficult for her. Jenny stood beside him, throwing me a resentful glance before looking at Mason with heartbreaking tenderness. Mason, don't wrong yourself like this. What a pitiful pair of lovebirds. I laughed, looking down at the hand he was using to hold my wrist. Didn't you just tell me to come at you? Then let go and let me slap you twice. Mason's eyes darkened. Don't make a scene. If you're still angry about last night, I can apologize to you. Oh, so you just don't want your precious face to take 2 slaps. I nodded. Makes sense. After all, just for this face of yours, I was foolish enough to pay 800,000 yuan. I suppose I should cherish it a little too. Me mentioning the money over and over clearly stabbed straight into Mason's manly, high and mighty pride. Enough. His expression turned cold, hatred flickering in his eyes as he stared at me. I told you, I will pay you back. I refused to back down even a little. Oh, And when do you plan on doing that? His lashes trembled, but he couldn't say a definitive date. He could only stand there in silence. A sharp, fleeting ache cut through my chest. I knew very well it was because I had once truly, sincerely liked him. A boy slender and resilient like young bamboo, of course he would draw my gaze. So I had offered to help him on my own initiative, terrified of hurting his pride, lowering myself to cater to him in every way. In return, he gradually came to see it all as natural and deserved. Everything I gave was ignored. All he remembered was the feeling of being humiliated. So even years later, long after we had broken up, Mason still clung to this resentment. He wanted me to admit aloud that giving him money, helping him when he was at his lowest, was my wrongdoing. Giving the money was your idea. No one forced you. Jenny spoke through reddened eyes. Avery, money can't buy everything. Even if you used money to force Mason to be with you, you can't make him love you. I turned to her. Then who does he love? You? Instinctively, Jenny glanced at Mason, seeing that his gaze remained fixed entirely on me. The smugness on her face froze ever so slightly. Chapter 5. Time was almost up for class, so I ignored them and hurried away. After staying at school for 2 days, Mickey called to say my parents had returned and he was driving over to pick me up. When I went downstairs, Mason blocked me at the entrance. His studio was currently in a crucial development stage, and he still had a part-time job in the restaurant kitchen. He should have been very busy. In the past, I was the one doing everything possible to cling to him, always chasing after him. What is it? Mason looked at me, some strange emotion stirring in his eyes. You kept wanting me to take you to the amusement park. I have time this afternoon. He was clearing his schedule for me. I let out a short laugh. Move. I'm going home. He didn't move, looking at me with deep, searching eyes. Avery, I finally have some free time. Don't be stubborn. Stubborn? I found it amusing. Mason, get your position straight. To put it nicely, you're my boyfriend. To put it bluntly, you're the boy toy I paid for. When I want to see you, you set aside time immediately. When I don't have time, you stay in your lane and keep your dignity as a kept man. Don't bother me. Understand? Ignoring Mason's humiliated expression, I walked past him and out of the school gate. Mickey opened the car door for me and handed over a paper bag he had placed in the front seat. I passed by the dessert shop you like and got the bread you enjoy. I pulled out a slice of toast and turned to look at him. Passed by? That shop was definitely nowhere near the route from home to school. Passed by. From my angle, I could see his handsome profile, highbrow bones, long and thick lashes, his jaw tense because he was pressing his lips together. His ears, half hidden by his hair, were tinged with red. Mickey tried to remain composed as he started the car. I took a bite of the toast and suddenly said, "Your ears are red," and I successfully watched that red spread from his ears down to his neck. When Madame returned, she brought a gift for you. He shifted the topic stiffly as he drove. The housekeeper went to the market early to pick fresh tiger prawns. She said she'll cook your favorite braised prawns tonight. I curled up in the seat, hugging the half bag of toast, listening as he talked about these small domestic details. Warm sunlight streamed through the window, and before I knew it, I fell asleep, and I dreamt again of the original plot. The family business went bankrupt. My father jumped from a building, and my mother took her last breath in a hospital bed. Mickey took me from place to place, eventually hiding in a shabby rental house in the old city district, yet the debt collectors still found us. Right in front of me, they crushed his spine inch by inch with steel pipes. Covered in blood, he still shielded me, using eyes that were gradually losing their light to look at me. Run. Young miss, run. In the dream, I ran helplessly, unable to find even a slightly decent job, eventually forced to sell drinks in nightclubs. People who had once fawned over me came specifically to mock me, ordering alcohol and forcing me to drink it down. Then Mason appeared, now a rising star among the wealthy, bringing along his glamorous fiancée. Jenny, the dream version of me, wanted to escape, but something held me in place, and strange voices echoed by my ears. Sure, the heroine is pitiful, but you can't blame Mason. A man's pride was humiliated. He finally fell for her, and she broke up with him like that. If she doesn't suffer exactly what the male lead suffered back then, She'll never realize her mistakes. Avery is so ungrateful. She's dirt poor now and drowning in debt. Yet Mason still wants her. Doesn't that mean he truly loves her? Terrified, I opened my eyes wide, searching for the source of those voices. But there was nothing. Young Miss, Avery. A familiar voice entered my ears, like a sudden beam of light breaking through the surrounding darkness. My eyes flew open, and I saw Mickey in front of me, his face filled with anxious worry. He was very close. His warm breath brushed my skin. A living Mickey. None of the things in the dream had happened yet. I stared at him blankly as my vision blurred, tears rolling down my cheeks. Panicking, he grabbed some tissues, wanting to wipe my tears but not daring to touch my face. He finally froze awkwardly in place. I reached out and held his hand, feeling the warmth of his palm, finally grounding myself in reality. Mickey, don't die. He lowered his eyes to look at me. The fingers of the hand I held curled in tightly, inch by inch, with the young Mrs. command, I will not die. Chapter 6. After dinner, I called my dad into the study. Avery, what's wrong? Did your boyfriend need your help again? He looked at me with fatherly affection, though in his eyes there were faint traces of dissatisfaction toward Mason. I saw it clearly, and guilt surged even stronger inside me. It has nothing to do with him. I bit my lip and said softly, Dad, have you and Mom been considering any new investment projects lately? The original story didn't give detailed explanations about our bankruptcy. It only said that my parents failed in an investment project. The capital chain broke, and a series of disasters followed. My dad froze for a moment before letting out a small laugh. Why the sudden interest in the family company? Even so, he still opened his computer and showed me all their recent investment plans without holding anything back. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual, until I saw a familiar name among the project partners. Dorian. If I remembered correctly, in the original story, he became Mason's closest brother 5 years later, and the first person to recognize Mason's potential and willingly invest in his company. Which meant, my family's bankruptcy, the deaths of my parents and Mickey, all of the tragedies in my life, could they all be tied back to Mason? My heartbeat suddenly sped up. I felt as if I could hear blood rushing through my body. I took several deep breaths to steady myself and tried to keep my voice calm. Why choose this project? My dad glanced at it. Dorian came to us first. Your mom and I reviewed the proposal. It looked decent, so we put it on the short list. The contract hasn't been signed yet. Something in my mind grew clearer and clearer, like pieces of a puzzle falling into place. I stared at Dorian's name for a very long time before finally speaking again. Next time you meet him, can you bring me along? My dad agreed. Before I left the study, he seemed to remember something. You mentioned wanting me to take care of Mason's studio. There was a small order 2 days ago. Secretary Jing brought it up. I handed it to Mason's studio. He ruffled my hair. Don't say Dad doesn't look after your little boyfriend. A sharp bitterness spread through my chest. I sniffed and looked up at him. You don't need to help him anymore. A flicker of surprise crossed his eyes. What happened? Did you two fight? I shook my head and hugged his arm. Nothing. I just don't like him anymore. Since I had no classes for the next few days, I stayed home. That was when I found out my mom had arranged for Mickey to join the family company. With Mickey's degree and ability, it'd be no problem assigning him a managerial position, but he insisted on starting from the bottom. My mom held her forehead and smiled at me. That child is so humble. Mickey was fixing the sofa cushions I had messed up. Hearing this, he smiled and said, It's my honor to receive Madam's trust, but I can't let others think you're blurring personal and professional boundaries. He bent down to place the cushions neatly back in place. The fabric of his white dress shirt stretched smoothly along his back, faint creases outlining a slim, firm waist, leading down to long, straight legs wrapped in tailored suit trousers. Avery. It wasn't until my mom called me that I realized I had drifted off again while staring at Mickey. She sipped her tea and gave me a thoughtful look. It's been a while since you've gone shopping. Let Mickey accompany you. Chapter 7. Previously, I had taken Mason to Chanel once, because the sales associate mistakenly thought he was the one paying and asked whether it would be paid by card or WeChat. He suddenly lost his temper. He looked at me coldly. Aren't you tired of doing this all the time? He turned and walked off. I didn't even buy the bag I'd chosen. I chased after him and coaxed him for a long time before he finally gave me a smile. Naturally. In the original story, this incident also became one of my sins. A bag you casually picked cost nearly half a month of his mother's medical expenses. It was like a slap across the face. Do you know how deeply that hurt Mason's pride as a man? Now, with Mickey following behind me as we walked into the store, his expression remained calm as ever. The sales associate brought out the season's new designs. I casually chose 2 bags and was about to pay when Mickey had already stepped forward and taken out his card. I paused. "They're expensive." He lowered his eyes with a small smile, his voice gentle. "No need to worry, young miss. I've saved quite a bit over the years." I couldn't win against him. I watched helplessly as he paid, carried the bags, then softly asked, "Young miss, is there anything else you'd like to buy? If my mom finds out I went shopping and used your money, she'll definitely scold me." He curved his lips slightly, his eyes bending as he smiled. "I won't let Madam find out." As we spoke, we had already walked out of the mall. I hadn't yet decided where to go next when I suddenly noticed a familiar figure in the distance. It was Mason. Because I had spoken too harshly to him that day, he hadn't contacted me at all the past few days, which honestly had been a relief. But now, during hours when he should have been busy at his studio, he walked into a nearby restaurant with a young man. I pressed my lips together and led Mickey inside. We found a corner seat. After waiting for a long time, we finally saw them leaving a private room. I took out my phone and, through the cover of several green plants, photographed Mason and the man next to him. "Do you know who this is?" Mickey looked at the picture. His expression gradually sharpened. "It's Dorian." As expected, I backed up the photo twice and put away my phone. Through the glass, I watched Mason send Dorian to his car and then take a taxi back to school. Today he was neatly dressed in a suit, polished and put together, nothing like the boy who had been stopped at a restaurant entrance half a month ago. I laughed a little and asked Mickey, "Do you think my taste in people is terrible?" "It's not the young Mrs. fault. When someone lets greed grow in their heart, they become impossible to guard against." He reached over and cut the steak on my plate for me, his voice low and comforting. "Eat first. I'll report this matter to Sir and Madam. You don't need to worry." Mickey had grown up in my family. He'd seen firsthand how decisive and formidable my parents were in the business world, so he naturally didn't take Mason seriously. But in that so-called original story, it was exactly Mason and Dorian's crude scheming that destroyed the family business my parents had spent decades building. Steam rose from the plate, warming Mickey's fingertips faintly red. His slender fingers, joints clean and defined, were as graceful as bamboo. Without thinking, I reached out and held his hand. He instinctively tried to pull away, but I tightened my grip. "Young miss." His always calm voice trembled slightly, like a soft feather brushing lightly across the heart. I looked into his misty, glistening eyes and asked softly, "If I want to tell you something unbelievable, would you believe me?" Chapter 8. In the villa garden late at night, the moonlight hung like woven silk. Mickey sat across from me, staring steadily. "So even if I died, it still didn't stop the young miss from suffering all that hardship?" I shook my head. "None of that was your fault." Thinking carefully, it felt like the moment Mason entered my life, everything veered off course. I fell from heaven into the mud, while he climbed higher and higher with astonishing speed. All the illogical twists, it was all just to force a perfect, happy ending. But I gave him money, helped him in every way I could on his entrepreneurial path. Shouldn't he be grateful? Why would he feel humiliated? And if he felt humiliated, he shouldn't have accepted it in the first place. Looking at Mickey across from me, a sudden thought surfaced. When we were kids, I asked my parents to bring you into the Fu family. I treated you like a horse to ride, blamed you whenever I made mistakes, even forced you to do my homework. Did you hate me for it? No. He shook his head, leaning forward slightly, his gaze earnest. Being chosen by the young miss has always been my honor. A cool, quiet botanical fragrance drifted from him. Vaguely, I remembered it was the perfume I had once bought him. Honeysuckle and mugwort. Back then, I was completely absorbed in Mason. While passing by the counter, I only remembered that Mickey's birthday was approaching and casually picked a bottle. "It's getting late. Young miss, please go upstairs and rest." Mickey's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "Whatever it is, tomorrow I'll help you resolve it." He walked me upstairs. At the bedroom door, He told me goodnight, yet didn't leave immediately. After a moment, he said, "No matter what, I won't let anything from your dream happen." Chapter 9. A few days later, I drove myself to Mason's studio. The 800,000 yuan I had given him hadn't all been used for his mother's illness. The remainder had gone toward renting a suburban office and launching his studio. When I walked in, I saw him and Jenny leaning close together over a computer, studying something. They were very close, an intimate atmosphere. Jenny noticed me first. Her expression changed. "Who told you to come in?" That guilty reaction, as if she were doing something shameful and I had caught her in the act. I crossed my arms, expression blank. "I came to see my boyfriend. Do I need your permission?" "Get out." Mason looked at me, but spoke to Jenny. "You should go." Jenny glared at me angrily before getting up to leave. Once we were alone, Mason put on that cold expression again, looking at me mockingly. "What? The young miss finally has time today and wants to summon her boy toy?" He still thought he could control me using the same tactics as before, that I would panic, apologize, and then desperately try to please him. I gave a cold laugh. "Since you know your role, why aren't you already crawling over here to say something sweet to make me happy, so I won't mind you flirting shamelessly with your little childhood sweetheart?" He stared at me, stunned. I continued. "My dad went out of his way to pull strings and give your studio a job. Instead of being grateful, you dare yell at me? What? Even a kept man eating soft rice can be this arrogant?" "Avery." His voice rose sharply, anger spilling through. "Mason, get this straight. Even your studio was built with my money. If I wanted to, a single bank transfer record is enough to demand your original shares. If you raise your voice at me again, you can pack your things and get out today. Do you understand?" Mason stared at me, jaw tight, veins bulging at his forehead. Lately, my attitude toward him had changed completely. He must have sensed something was off, unable to figure out why. At first, I still felt some leftover bitterness, but once I realized he was tied to the downfall of my family, to the deaths of my parents and Mickey, all of that bitterness turned into righteous fury. I sacrificed my future and pride. My family paid with their lives, all because I loved someone like him. And in the end, when I had lost everything, he and his people still tried their hardest to brainwash me, insisting everything was my fault. I pulled out a chair and sat down, lifting my chin to look at him, apologize, then come home with me to see my dad and thank him properly. Chapter 10. I drove Mason back home. The entire way, he sat stiffly in the passenger seat, jaw tight, saying nothing. I said calmly, "You've already taken everything. Don't pull a corpse face. Who are you trying to upset?" He closed his eyes briefly. "Avery, I'm not here to entertain you." I gave a light, mocking laugh. "Sorry, but you are. If I tell you to smile, you smile. Otherwise, get out." When we entered the house, Mickey was in the yard pruning the flowers. His gaze fell on Mason. There was still a faint smile on his lips, but sharp hostility slowly surfaced in his eyes. "Young Miss is back." He greeted me with a smile. "And this is my boyfriend, Mason." His fingers trembled slightly. "What does Sir like to eat? I'll prepare it with the housekeeper." "No need. He's not staying for dinner. He's only here to thank my dad." I brought Mason upstairs. My dad was waiting in the guest room. The look he gave Mason was openly scrutinizing. Mason stood before him, back straight, looking as if deeply humiliated, forcing out a reluctant thank you through gritted teeth. "Thank you, sir, for your guidance and support. Mason will be sure to repay it in the future." My dad replied coolly, "I don't need your repayment. Just treat Avery well." "Yes." My dad glanced at me. "Avery, go downstairs and rest. I want to speak with Mason alone." He talked to Mason for a long time. When Mason finally left, my dad came to me with a strange expression and said, "That boy Mason does have ability and a calculating mind. He already signed that order, and he answered every question without leaving flaws. But it's a pity, someone who receives grace yet doesn't repay it, even resents it. That's truly poor character. Morally rotten." My dad sighed. "Avery, with someone like Mickey before you, how did you end up liking a person like this?" "Mickey?" I looked up sharply at my dad, meeting his regretful, exasperated gaze. All these years, your mother and I have both seen Mickey's feelings for you. We opposed you being with Mason not because of status. In fact, if it were someone like Mickey, capable, steady, humble, even if his family background was worse, it wouldn't matter. But this Mason, he really doesn't know his place. Ambitious and greedy. My dad grumbled as he walked downstairs. I stood frozen, then slowly moved toward the window and looked out. In the dimming twilight, Mickey was still carefully tending my little garden. When I was little, I read too many fairy tales and envied the princesses who had their own gardens, so my mom helped me create one too. But most flowers needed careful attention. I grew impatient after a few days, and the responsibility fell to Mickey. He had been tending it ever since, years and years. When I was young, I treated him like an older brother. Later, after seeing more of the outside world, and with him always quietly standing behind me, I gradually overlooked his presence. But tonight, my dad said, his feelings for me. What kind of feelings would Mickey have? The answer wasn't difficult to guess at all. I slowly walked down the stairs toward the garden. In the few short minutes it took, countless memories of Mickey flashed in my mind. On the ground lay a discarded rose stem, pruned away, already slightly withered. Mickey. I picked it up and called softly. You seem unhappy. He answered softly. It's my personal issue. Is it because I said, in front of you, that Mason is my boyfriend? He turned slightly away from me, no longer looking at me. But that was what we agreed on. It's just part of the plan, and I'm not going to be fooled by him again. So why are you still unhappy? Still holding the rose. I walked over and forcibly turned his shoulder toward me. Mickey, look at me. It's impolite not to look at someone when they're speaking to you. Under the moonlight, his lowered lashes fluttered like butterfly wings, trembling softly against my heart. Through the thin cotton of his t-shirt, the heat of his body pressed against my palm. Almost flustered, he tried to escape my gaze. I'm sorry, young miss, if I made you feel offended. He didn't finish, because I grabbed his collar, rose on my toes, and kissed him. The kiss was reckless and heated. In our haste, my teeth bumped his lip. He let out a muffled sound, and his face flushed even deeper. Dummy, you should respond to me. His breath trembled as he looked down. Sorry, young miss. I've never learned how. Then hold me steady. Don't let me fall. Yes. As our bodies pressed together, the rose was crushed between us. Petals scattered across the ground, and faint red marks stained both our clothes. The fresh, cool scent of his botanical cologne gradually mixed with a sweet, intoxicating warmth. I fell into his arms, and he instinctively held my waist, the two of us collapsing together onto the swaying garden swing. When the kiss finally ended, both our breaths were uneven, our hearts pounding wildly. I looked at him. You like me, don't you? He stared at me helplessly, as if a secret he never dared reveal had been torn open. After a long silence, he finally let out a bitter smile. I just don't want the young miss to think I have improper intentions, that I'm someone coveting you. I clicked my tongue, impatient, and leaned in to kiss him again. How can you be this stupid? Isn't it possible, I murmured against his lips, that I'm the one coveting you instead? Chapter 11. When I was 4, I envied that Nova had an older brother to protect her, so I threw a tantrum and demanded that my parents give me one too. My mom tried to coax me, amused. Even if we had a baby now, he'd still be your younger brother. I cried and insisted I wanted an older brother, so they took me to the orphanage. Mickey was the older brother I chose for myself there. He was 5 years older than me. When I had just started elementary school, he was already close to graduating. Even so, he came to pick me up every day, on time. As my parents' careers grew more successful and they became busier, it was Mickey and the housekeeper who took care of me at home. When I was 11, I lost the audition for the role of Snow White in the school play and cried nonstop at home. In the end, Mickey put on the evil queen's dress and performed Snow White with me at home. The year he took the college entrance exam, Mickey went to Beijing to attend one of the best universities. I cried for days at home. Mickey almost changed his school choice because of me, but my mom stopped him. She said, Avery, you're almost 14. You're not a little kid who doesn't understand anything anymore. You know what this would mean for Mickey. I cried and said, But you're the ones who said he's my brother. He is your brother, but he's not your servant. You must respect his life. Back then, I had just entered my rebellious phase and refused to listen. Probably from that point on, I stopped calling him brother, older brother, and started provocatively calling him by his name instead. Even then, he only gave me a tolerant smile. Young miss can call me anything. I'll always be happy. By the time I snapped out of these memories, Mickey's ears and neck had already turned red. Don't call me that. I narrowed my eyes. Why not? I called you that so many times when I was little. I'll call you again, brother. Brother. Now tell me, do you like me or not? His Adam's apple bobbed twice. In the end, he accepted his fate and nodded. Then he said softly, I never thought about it. Never thought about what? His gaze fell to my lips, slowly warming with tenderness. Never thought the young miss would ever look at me, as if the moon hanging high in the sky would, for one moment, shine its light on me. I cupped his face. Then how many more times do I have to kiss you before you believe it? Brother? He leaned in and pressed his lips lightly to my fingertips. This is enough. When Mickey and I returned inside the house, my dad immediately called him into the study. My mom sat with me in the living room, poured me a cup of tea, and asked, Are you truly sure you won't soften toward Mason again? He's targeting our family. How could I possibly let him off? To be ruined and still stay infatuated with the culprit. That's something only a forcibly written plot would demand. My mom sighed in relief. I was worried. Before, you seemed like you couldn't live without him. I was young and foolish. I couldn't judge people well. I spoke softly. Luckily, I still have a chance to make things right. Nothing had become irreversible like in the dream. For the next month, I went to Mason's studio almost every single day, and his expression grew heavier by the day. At first, he still had the energy to argue with me, throwing my merciless sarcasm right back at me. But soon, he no longer had the time, because his collaboration with Dorian had gone wrong. This wasn't 5 years later. They had not yet built that unbreakable bond formed by jointly destroying the Fu family. And besides, what they were plotting now was a highly profitable yet extremely risky scheme. Mason would never have imagined that just because he spent an afternoon at my house that day, and my dad purposely dropped hints suggesting he favored Mason as a potential successor of the Fu Corporation. On the other hand, no matter how they tempted my parents with profit, they refused to loosen their grip on that project Mason intended to use as a trap. Their tone suggested they had already sensed something was off. Dorian, always sensitive, began to suspect Mason's loyalty. He went to confront Mason and asked, testing him, what exactly he had talked about with my dad that day. Had he accidentally exposed something? Naturally, Mason denied everything, but the more he denied it, the more Dorian believed Mason had switched sides. Mason could no longer obtain their next step plan, and the resources Dorian had originally allocated to his studio were all withdrawn. He could no longer get help from me either, leaving his career completely stalled. At the company, after observing for a long time, I'm certain now, Dorian really has placed someone inside, and it's in the most critical area, the financial system. That night at home, Mickey told us in the study that the company's accounts had started showing problems 3 months ago. Their movements are very subtle. If we hadn't detected them, within half a year, Fu Corporation's capital flow would have collapsed entirely, with no way to recover. This matched perfectly with the timeline of the bankruptcy from the original story. A massive dam collapses from a tiny breach. If Avery hadn't warned us, your mom and I really might have suffered a huge loss because of Dorian. My dad let out a long sigh, patted my shoulder, and his gaze grew sharp. But now, it's time to cast the net. Chapter 12. My dad finally relented and agreed to sign the investment contract with Dorian. But the official corporate seal used for approval had expired, so the contract needed to go through the full review process and be reissued. During this delay, in order to maintain the illusion that the project was operating normally, Dorian nearly exhausted all the funds he had on hand. He then activated the person he had planted inside the Fu Corporation's financial system, only to be caught on the spot. My dad immediately called the police. They soon took away Dorian, his accomplices, and all personnel involved in the fraudulent investment scheme. He was the illegitimate son of his family, unable to win against the legitimate heirs. He set his sights on my Fu family, which was now rising strongly in the business world. It was a gamble, Mickey said, but he bet wrong. When everything happened, I was sitting at Mason's desk in his studio. He closed his eyes, as if forcing out words he found humiliating. Avery, can you help me one more time? With Dorian gone and my dad secretly suppressing him, his studio was close to collapsing. I looked at him coldly. You're asking me to help you? Yes. I smiled. Is this how you ask for help? Kneel and say something nice, maybe then I'll consider it. He jerked his head up, staring at me. After a moment's collision of gazes, Mason clenched his teeth and knelt before me. His face was filled with humiliation, and his voice carried desperate hatred. Please help me. I stood up and kicked him in the chest with my heel. How ridiculous. Mason, do you really think I don't know what you've done? Why would you ever believe I'd help you again? He scrambled to his feet, disheveled, eyes reddened. Avery, I'm your boyfriend. I let out a short laugh. Oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you we broke up. A flash of shock crossed his face. He stared at me, unable to believe it. Of course he couldn't. The old me had loved him so wholeheartedly, even when angry, even when arguing. I had never said the words break up. He must have been convinced that my coldness now was just the tantrum of a spoiled heiress, that I was simply jealous because of Jenny. He thought I couldn't live without him. And in the original story, that was true, if I hadn't regained my memories. At this stage, while the Fu family was slipping into bankruptcy, I would be scrambling to invent some pathetic breakup excuse, taking all the blame onto myself. I would never have known that Mason achieved success by stepping over the bodies of my family. After a long pause, he took a deep breath. Why? Are you tired of playing with me? Because you're unlucky, I said lightly. You drain my family's fortune. I enjoyed watching panic flicker across his eyes. If a man's dignity is so precious, then why didn't you refuse me in the beginning? You plotted with others against my family while still having the audacity to beg for my help. Tell me, Mason, aren't you pathetic? The sound of police sirens grew nearer outside. Dorian had probably already named his accomplices. When the police pushed open the door, I leaned against the edge of the desk, watching calmly. Mason, I said softly, your dreams of rising to greatness end here. Chapter 13. After everything was settled, I met Nova again to thank her for the things she intentionally or unintentionally said in front of Dorian. It was just something I said in passing, not worth a special thank you. Nova waved casually, then glanced out the window. I heard you and Mickey are together now. I held my wine glass, looking at her. Are you upset? Why would I be upset? You said before that you were a little interested in Mickey. Humph. Nova let out a small laugh. I noticed long ago that this guy had ulterior motives for you. I tested it a bit, but you didn't react at all. Instead, you fell for that two-faced Mason. Do you know what people were saying when we went out together last time? They laughed at you, said you'd gone full love brain, spending money and chasing after him while he couldn't even bother to say a nice word to you. She glanced at my empty glass and pushed the bottle toward me. Good thing you've come to your senses. Otherwise, if Dorian and your ex-boyfriend had succeeded together, you and I might never see each other again. She wasn't wrong. In the original storyline, after the Fu family went bankrupt, I really never saw Nova again. I finished my last glass, said goodbye to her, and stepped outside. Mickey was waiting by the car, lifting his gaze toward me under the moonlight. I opened my mouth, my voice hoarse from the wine. Why didn't you come inside with me? According to etiquette, when the young miss meets friends, I should wait outside as the house attendant. I shook my head and threw myself into his arms, circling his waist. But you're not the attendant. You're my boyfriend, Mickey. I reached up and squeezed his flushed ear, suddenly inspired. If you got a piercing here and wore a diamond stud, I think it would suit you. The next second, the dizziness hit me, and I slid downward, only to be caught in his arms. I curled up against his chest. If the young miss wants to see it, I'll get it tomorrow, he whispered. Whatever you like, I'll do. He placed me in the passenger seat and buckled the seatbelt. I stared unhappily at his elegant profile and challenged him. So, when are you planning to change how you address me? When we sleep together tonight, are you still going to call me young miss? His hands suddenly tightened on the steering wheel. After a moment, He started the car. A feather-light voice drifted to my ears, so soft it almost disappeared into the night. If that's how you like me to call you. Chapter 14. A few months later, the verdict for Mason and Dorian was announced. The two of them, both involved in financial crimes, received sentences of 3 years and 1 year and 9 months respectively. The sentences weren't severe, but enough to stain their lives with a permanent mark. I went to the prison to visit Mason, separated by the glass. He looked at me with pain and unwillingness. Do you feel this shouldn't have been your ending? You think you were supposed to rise to the top, stand under the spotlight receiving admiration and flattery, crush me into the dirt, then act like a savior and pull me back up, don't you? But now it's all gone. What he felt now was merely the pain he had intended to inflict on me. He gritted his teeth. After a long moment, he suddenly said, "Actually, I really liked you, Avery. When school first started, I noticed you in the crowd. You always seemed happy, always dazzling, with no burdens of life. Everything you enjoyed so effortlessly was something I could never reach. I did like you, but when you used money to stain my sincere feelings, it only made me feel disgusted. I just wanted to climb higher, until you stopped looking down at me with that superior, pitiful gaze. I wanted you to look up to me. Only then would you understand how humiliating today is for me. And after you admitted your mistakes, I would have loved you properly. How is that wrong?" His logic made me laugh out loud. How is that not wrong? Is your brain broken, you pathetic idiot? Before college, we were strangers. Your suffering had nothing to do with me. I gave you money and helped you. You should have thanked me. If you felt insulted, you should have thrown the money in my face and told me you'd succeed on your own, without my filthy money. But you didn't. The truth is, you stayed because you coveted my family's wealth. You're someone who could never succeed on your own. You're a failure. Do you understand? Mason stared at me, face pale. His mouth formed a weak, powerless rebuttal. It's not like that. Oh, right, I forgot to tell you. Your mother's cancer has relapsed. Unfortunately, this time, without the money from selling yourself. Jenny, who used to visit her every day, also ran away. In the original story, Mason's mother never thanked me for helping her. She believed that my money had tainted her son's noble character. Whenever I called to check on her, she mocked and insulted me. She never allowed me to visit her. Later, after my family went bankrupt, her cancer relapsed. Before she died, she forced Jenny and Mason to get engaged. Too bad. This time, she never got to wait for her successful and accomplished son. The daughter-in-law she valued so much couldn't endure the bitterness of falling from grace either. I curled my lips slightly and stood up. When you have nothing to do in prison, pray for her. Pray that when you're released, she's still alive in this world, so the two of you can reunite as mother and son. When I stepped out of the prison gates, brilliant sunlight fell all over me. I turned to Mickey and asked, "Tell me, do you think a single word Mason said was true?" He shook his head. I laughed. Exactly. I don't believe it either. How could anyone's way of liking someone be to drag her down from the heights? To watch coldly as she falls and gets injured? To let her crawl through dirt and mud, then demand she apologize before he's willing to give her half a drop of watered down, worthless affection? After a few steps, Mickey suddenly spoke. Not everyone thinks that way. I tilted my head toward him. I like you, he said, because I want you to always sit high above, standing tall. I'll climb on my own until one day I can stand behind you. A princess never has to remove her golden crown, never needs to fall from her pedestal or wag her tail in exchange for love. There will always be someone who sees her as the distant, hanging moon, and walks toward her light with single-minded devotion. After a long silence, I reached out and held Mickey's hand. But I don't want you standing behind me, I said. I want you beside me. His warm fingertips curled in my palm, lightly stroking, soft, tempting, yet on the surface, he only lowered his gaze with a quiet smile. Yes, young miss,